Welcome to the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. My name is Dr. Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and leader in the field of mental health, energy psychology, addiction, trauma, and empowerment. In this podcast, we will be exploring mental health from a variety of perspectives, from the spiritual to the shamanic and beyond. What if mental illness isn't everything we think it is? What if everything we see as a pathology is actually a possibility? What else is possible with mental health? Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you today with another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. I am really excited today to have with me Ester Nicholson. She is the author of Soul Recovery, 12 Keys to Healing Dependence. She's a speaker, recovery coach, recording artist, and recovering addict who brings her incredible journey of transformation to a practical curriculum, addressing the root causes of dependence as they occur in contemporary living. Her soul recovery programs expand the traditional concept of 12-step recovery into spiritual practices that have served thousands. As a gifted vocal artist, Nicholson's musical career include worldwide tours with Rod Stewart and Bette Midler, with appearances on such TV shows as Oprah, The Tonight Show, The View, Good Morning America, and The Ellen DeGeneres Show. Ester has inspired thousands with her keynotes at conference events, including one that we recently both spoke at. Ester is a trusted advisor on the She Recovers and NAATP DEI committees, and is instrumental in shifting the business as usual practices of treatment providers with her workshop, Healing Bias and Racism in Recovery for Industry Leaders. I'm so excited to have you here with us today, Ester. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I always like to start off with asking our guests to tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey. How did you get to where you are now doing what you're doing? What was that process like for you?
God, I hope that doesn't take up our whole 30 minutes. I'll try to be brief. But in short, I just celebrated 36 years of recovery on November 1st. And I'm very grateful for that. But I remember before I started my recovery journey, I was addicted horribly to crack cocaine. My daughter was removed from my care. I slept on anyone's couch who would allow me to sleep on their couch until they wouldn't allow me to anymore. And that was my motivation to finally go into treatment. And even then it took me 2 years to string 30 days together.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was in I finally, someone got me an apartment or something. And I was in my apartment and thinking I was fine. I was going to some meetings, and all of a sudden that obsession hit me, where your stomach turns over and you have to go to the bathroom, and my mouth started watering and my heart started palpitating, and any reasoning thought just left my mind. This just overwhelming obsession and craving came over me, and I didn't have on any shoes, and it had hit me so hard that I didn't take time to put on my shoes. I just ran out into the street to grab a taxi and to take me to Dunsmuir and Pico, which at that time that's where the drug dealer lived in Los Angeles. And when I got in the taxi, he turned around to face me in the back seat, the cab driver, and he said, "Young lady, please don't kill yourself today." Like he knew the neighborhood where I was asking him to take me. And that wasn't magical, or that wasn't an extraordinary moment, because I've been asked a million times by a million different people, why are you killing yourself? Please don't kill yourself today. What was magical about this moment was that it was a culmination of all of my bottoms. And it was grace. Like I was given this moment, like when he looked in my eyes, where the fog of separation from my soul dissipated. And I caught a glimpse of who I really was, without my traumas, without my fears, without my anxiety, without the addiction. And I felt, just in an instant, it felt like 5 minutes, but it was probably an instant, where I felt like I was home and I knew I had never left,
Mm.
that I had only dreamt that I had left, but I had never left. And there was there was a peace and a beauty and a loveliness and a confidence and a clarity. And I knew it was me. And then bam, the veil parted again.
Mhm.
What I got in that glimpse, that I could either insist that the taxi take me to Dunsmuir and Pico, and I was going to die that day,
Mhm.
or I could get my ass out of that car, out of that cab, and go back into my apartment and call someone from the
Mhm.
program and say, I'm going to die. I knew it. I knew that was the fork in the road,
Yeah.
that either I was going to choose to live or I was going to choose to die. And so when I went back to meetings, um, I really took the 12 steps off of the wall and really started studying them as spiritual principles, which they are intended to be. And I think a lot of people misunderstand the 12 steps or are turned off by the 12 steps because they think that the meetings or the rooms or the people are representative of the steps,
Right.
and they are not. The 12 steps, whether you call them the 12 steps or just spiritual principles or scripture or, any self-mastery modality that we're looking at, they're still those steps, maybe in different forms, but they're the things that we have to do in order to allow our ego to feel safe enough to get out of the way, to tap into our authentic self. So when I started really studying and practicing these principles, layer after layer of who I thought I was started to fall away. And I got sober. And next thing I knew, I had a year. And so when, it was like, okay, so now, crack cocaine is no longer my problem. But I was still suffering from such anxiety and feelings of unworthiness and not enoughness and all of that, right? And so I discovered on my journey that, of course, they always talk about the addiction that, cocaine or alcohol or whatever it is that you're addicted to is just the symptom. But I really got it. It was like, oh, I'm not addicted to cocaine. I'm not addicted to bad relationships. I'm not addicted to sugar. I'm addicted to my illusion, my false identity of unworthiness, not enoughness, and that the addiction that is the foundation of that addiction is the belief that I'm separate and apart from God, my soul, my source. And so I had to find a way to bridge the gap between the 12 steps of these principles that are everywhere and everything, and metaphysical principles, which the 12 steps are metaphysical principles, but I had to find my oneness with, I was having this spiritual experience, but intellectually the spiritual experience was still outside of myself.
Yeah.
So in practicing ancient teachings and new thought, I came into the realization of, oh wow, this spiritual experience is actually me.
Mhm.
I'm one with it. I'm one with this power that we call God, which then shifted my recovery to a whole nother level. And then I was like, I have to teach this, and of course we get to teach our testimony. We get
Mhm.
to teach, our evolution. And that's how soul recovery was created, in the recovery, the rediscovery, and the reawakening to our soul, because that's what happened to me in that taxi
Yeah.
that day. Was I had rediscovered something about me that had gotten lost. And then I had to go on the journey of rediscovering that and reawakening to that, right? And remembering that. So that's what soul recovery is. And, that's what brought me here to this day.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, I think both of us working with people in recovery, the clients sometimes struggle with this idea of spirituality. And like you said, they see it as something outside of themselves. There's this higher power that is this nebulous thing. I don't even know what it is. Maybe they grew up in a religious tradition that has some specific belief systems, but that I am separate from this thing, and this higher power is judging me and all. And they really struggle to even understand what spirituality is, much less how to have any kind of connection with, or that knowing that you've described, the knowing of that oneness. Like, how do you handle that with folks when they're really lost on that?
Thank you so much for asking that question. I'm ready. When I'm with clients, who I take through my program, we spend about 3 weeks to a month on doing higher power spirituality therapy, because so many people have been traumatized by the misunderstanding of that and the abuse of that, which isn't spirituality at all. It was something else called spirituality, right? And so because I am a 12-step person, and we look at that third step of making a decision to turn my self-will, my limited will, my fearful will, my disconnected will, and my life over to the care of something higher than myself. We do a lot of tapping on that. We do a lot of talking about that, and educating them that the higher power that they're turning their will and their life over to is actually their higher self. It is actually their real self.
Yeah.
It is that part of you that maybe you don't even remember catching a glimpse of it, or maybe you don't even remember ever experiencing it, but it's that part of you that you dream about. That you never thought, so to like just break it down in terms that, because we're always trying to break down something in a way that the person sitting in front of us can understand. Right. So it's that part of you that you've always dreamt about, but you didn't dare to dream it. That's the real you.
Yeah.
And if you could get behind turning yourself over to a power that is within you, that's got your back, that adores you, that cherishes you, that loves you, that doesn't judge you, that only sees the highest. I don't know if I had this kind of dad. I don't know if you've had these kind of parents or anyone listening, but I remember when I first started smoking marijuana, and my dad was a Baptist minister, and my mom said, "Buck," his name was Buck, and they call me Dimples. Dimples is smoking that stuff. Right. And my dad looked at me and he said, "Not my baby, not my baby. She's not doing that." So that's the way our higher power, the higher version of us, which we call the soul, it doesn't see your mistakes.
Right.
It doesn't see all this crazy stuff that you think about yourself. In essence, it's saying, "Not my baby. My baby's perfect.
Yeah.
My baby is the beloved. That's what my baby is." And so when we can get behind that, it's like, would you turn your will and your life over to a love like that? I'm like, of course. I'm like, let's roll with that.
Yeah. It's like our friend, TJ Woodward talks about the essential self, or the authentic self, which I think is just the same concept you're referring to. And clients sometimes when they come, especially to treatment, like a recovery program, they feel so broken and so defective, and just the shame is they're just riddled with shame, and then mental health things, anxiety, depression, all of it. And they are so disconnected from that essence, that true essence, that's their soul. And so sometimes what I share with them is, look at children, look at young children, like before they get conditioned and programmed and all the things.
Absolutely.
The young children, the babies, that sparkle in their eye, the joy of just looking around or playing with a toy or whatever it is. And
The
they're
freedom.
yes. And they're just present in this moment. They're not worrying about the future. They're not dwelling on the past. Like, that is that essence. And sometimes when I explain it to them in that way, they understand that, because some of them are parents, or they see that in children. And I say, but that essence has always been within you, and it's still there. You've just gotten disconnected from
Right.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So how else in your work with clients, yeah, how else do you help them with reconnecting? You mentioned tapping, and some of the folks, I mean, we've certainly talked about tapping on the show before, but maybe somebody who's tuning in for the first time might not know what that is. Can you tell us about what tapping is and how you work with it in your practice?
Well, tapping is a combination of Chinese acupuncture and spiritual psychology. And I look at tapping from this perspective, from the perspective of one of the perspectives from the law of attraction, let's say, right? That the law of attraction, the subjective mind, the unconscious mind responds to what we put into it, right? And what we emotionally feel, our emotional dominant, our dominant emotions creates a vibration. And this vibration, we create our own personal law. We create our own personal universe. And that's how we see everything. So as you know, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are, or we see things as we think we are. So your higher self only sees you as the beloved, only sees you as perfection. That's the love of the universe. But the laws of the universe can only reflect back to you what you think you are.
Right.
Right. So how I approach tapping is looking at the condition or the experience or the symptom first, right? And we start on that setup point sometimes, depending on if we're doing a long version of EFT or faster EFT, right? Sometimes something is so deep, we just need to do the long version, right? Of looking at the condition that was created, looking at the symptom or the experience. So we do a round of tapping on that. And then we do a round of tapping on the emotions behind the condition, because there's always an emotion attached to the experience, right? And then after we tap on the emotions, then we tap on the deep core beliefs, because spiritual principle says it's not done into you as you want. It's done into you as you really, really, really believe about yourself. So then we start tapping on those beliefs, and we start tapping on the patterns. And then we give ourselves permission to embrace and accept and own everything that we just said: the condition, the patterns, the emotions, the beliefs. And then we give ourselves permission to let it go as we're tapping, right? Understanding that it's not the part that created the condition that's letting it go. It's your higher self that's dissolving it into the nothingness from which it came. Right. And so that's how I look at tapping. It's like we deal with the condition, but in order to deal with the condition and the pattern, we have to look at the emotions that created the pattern, and we have to look at the beliefs that created the emotions. And when the beliefs and the emotions are dissolved, the pattern's going to dissolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people sometimes in traditional substance abuse treatment don't quite go that deep with it. They think, well, all you need to do is just stop drinking, go away to a program for 30 days and you'll be cured, right? Stop drinking, stay away from the drug dealers, delete them from your phones, like behaviors, right? And we know that it's so much more than that, like you just so beautifully stated. Like we have to look at what's causing the behavior, right? It's some sort of emotional state. Maybe it's unresolved trauma. I want to talk about that a little bit with you as well. Maybe it's these belief systems that are like the subconscious programs, like a computer. Our subconscious mind is like a computer, and it runs on programs, and sometimes those programs are glitchy and defective, and they're telling you really bad things about yourself,
but they're still operating on the hard drive. So I
Exactly.
look at that as like all the documents that we open up in the course of a day, right? That we might minimize. So they might not be in our field of awareness, but they're still there. They haven't been closed out.
Right.
So between the steps and tapping and meditation and affirmative word, I call it affirmative prayer or affirmative, if that word triggers someone, then affirmative word, which is simply aligning with your higher self. It's not praying to something outside of you to do something for you and kick you down some mercy if you happen to be good enough that day, right?
Mhm.
It's you speaking the word for yourself, aligning with the truth about you. That's
Yes.
all. That's what prayer is aligning with that which is already true about you that you have forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So let's talk a little bit about trauma, because we know that so much of addiction comes from and with trauma. It's kind of the chicken and the egg, right? Like they're woven together.
Of course.
How do you work with that in your practice with your clients and with your principles that you're using? How do you address the trauma?
Well, trauma happens like in that moment, right? That something like impacted you so in so powerfully. It impacted you, but it's not that impact that create that causes the trauma to continue. It's the perception that you've taken on as a result of that experience. So
Mhm.
let's say if you have an accident, for instance, now you take it on the perception that you're never safe,
Right.
right? So you've been traumatized by that, or you've had a relationship that ended abruptly or ended, right? And so it's not that the relationship ended in that moment. That was a painful experience, but now that experience is over. But what you have taken on about that experience about yourself is what the trauma is, and what keeps the wound bleeding, right?
Yes. Yes.
Until it's dealt with. So between, like, for instance, like the first step of recovery, we admit that we're powerless over alcohol or drugs, and our lives have become unmanageable. And I do for myself, and I take people in, it's like I admit that I of myself, this part of myself that's so scared and so traumatized, I am powerless over this trauma. I'm
Mhm.
powerless over how I react to it. I'm powerless over how I try to resist it. I'm powerless over trying to fix it. I'm powerless over giving into it.
Mhm.
And when I do, my life becomes unmanageable because it creates a sense of separation from my true self, right? So
Mhm.
that's step one. Step two, I'm coming to believe that a power greater than myself, which is my real self, can
Mhm.
restore me to my real self before the trauma even happened, right? And I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of my real and true self, whatever it is that you call that. And
Mhm.
then we'll go to the trauma, we'll go directly to the trauma, and we'll tap, if you're a 10, we're going to tap on that until we get you as close to a 0 as possible. And, there are some other exercises in that tapping, like, seeing your life on a blackboard, and your trauma and all of that anxiety and all of those thoughts and all of that pain played out on a blackboard. What does that blackboard look like? It's chaotic, it's crazy, it's cray cray, right? It's all over the
Right.
place.
Yep.
So we step up to that blackboard and we start erasing from top to bottom, left to right, while we're tapping. Now we have a blank blackboard,
Mhm.
right? And now I invite you to step into the back blackboard and become blank, become
Mhm.
nothing, become nothing, because in this nothingness, you are everything.
Mhm.
I'm releasing even as I'm saying that. In this nothingness, you are everything, and you are light, and you are safe, because there's nothing, you're not safe because there's nothing to be protected from here.
Right.
You
Right.
just are. You just
Well,
be, right?
yeah, in the presence of light, I always say this, in the presence of light, darkness cannot exist.
Right. Right.
Such a simple concept, but
Right.
like so profound. And I think that's what you're speaking to, is
Absolutely.
how do we help people connect with that lightness within
That's
that
right.
they that has become quite dark.
Absolutely. And
And
so, it has its place to talk about, of course, to continue to talk about the trauma, to work it out or whatever. I try not to pull over and park there in the story too long,
Mhm.
because it just continues to re-trigger and re-injure.
Mhm.
And because we are such powerful beings, and our minds are all powerful, that the more that we repeat the story, the
Right.
more we recreate it. And even if it's not happening, it feels like it's happening.
Yes.
So we
Exactly.
want to get out of that, we want to honor that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We want to honor the little girl, the little boy, the inner child. We want to start nurturing them and
Mhm.
loving them. Sometimes I say and of course, I say this to my clients because I say this to myself. Everything that I teach, I do, just like you.
Mhm.
So there are times when something could be so at a place of unrest within you that you can do the steps, you can tap, you can pray, you can talk to people, and you're still restless and you're still anxious. And
Mhm.
I liken that. I like to use the analogy of a colicky baby,
Mm.
right? Where the mom will say, I've changed this baby, I've changed the diaper, I've fed them, I gave them their medicine if they need medicine, I've rocked them, I've done everything I can do, and this baby is still crying.
Mhm.
And in that moment, when I see that I've done everything that I've been guided to do to help my inner child, it's time then to just rock the baby. She
Mhm.
doesn't want to be fixed. She
Mhm.
needs to just be and let these emotions just be.
Yes.
Because, I have been addicted. I've been guilty of it. I have been addicted to trying to fix the pain. I have a very low tolerance for pain, trying to fix the fear, trying to fix the anxiety, trying to fix whatever's going on with me immediately. It's like I have no tolerance for this at all.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then I had to realize, you know what? It's not going away until it's time for it to go away. And
Yes.
and there's something, I'm also a scripture girl. I add all of that in. And there's Jacob, I think. I'm not that much of a scripture girl. I remember people's names. But anyway, Jacob said,
Somebody said.
I said it. I know they said it. Uh, that I will wrestle with this angel all night and I will not let it go until it blesses me.
Mhm.
So sometimes I'm getting ready to cry. Sometimes something has to just be there because it's there as such a blessing, because we really need this breakthrough. We really need the blessing of this thing. And so it's not going to go away just because we've done all the tools.
Right.
It,
Mhm.
and then you finally surrender and say, okay, it's here to bless me. I just had an experience with a neighbor who has one of those hyped up sports cars
Mhm.
that they start like at 6 o'clock in the morning
Mhm.
outside of my bedroom window. I was livid. I was
Mhm.
resistant. I was going to make it go away. I was going to talk to everybody. It just all this kind of stuff until I realized I couldn't make it go away, that it was outside of my control. And
Mhm.
then I said, this has come to bless me.
Mm.
How has this come? Okay, I'm open for the blessing of this
Yeah.
noisy neighbor.
Yeah.
What it has forced me to do is, like, I'm not going to lay in bed and fume.
Mhm.
Like, that's not helpful.
Right.
I can't make them change.
Right.
That ain't gonna happen. What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get up a half hour early and go up to my womb room with my candles where I can't hear them.
Mhm.
And now they don't exist to me. It's like, and it's like, oh my God, and this is so healthy. I get to go to yoga earlier and I'm more centered because I'm getting up a half an hour earlier. And it's
Yeah.
like, so it came to bless me, because your higher self is always saying, grow, beloved, grow.
Mhm.
And we resist that next step of growing until something like that happens. It's like, you gonna grow now, or are you gonna just lay in bed and fume and be pissed off every day?
Well, yeah, and stay in a victim consciousness,
Um,
right? That's what that is.
Yeah.
And so much I think of the work that we do with clients in recovery is about empowerment. You've given your power away to
Yeah.
all these external people, places, and things.
Mhm,
You've given your power away to your trauma and to your story. You've given
mhm,
your power away to the drugs and alcohol or whatever other addictive thing you got, right? So
mhm.
it's about taking your power back, recognizing like the serenity prayer, what you do and do not have control over, and focusing on the things that you do. And you gave us just such a beautiful example of how that works in day-to-day life.
Absolutely. Well, here's the, take from a soul recovery perspective,
Mhm.
right? I don't have the power to give you my power.
Mhm.
I have the power to realize and remember my power. I
Mm.
never gave away my power. I thought I did. I don't have the power to give away my power. I'm the power.
Mm.
You're
Wow.
the power. How you
Mm.
gonna give away what you are? You can't. But you've
Wow.
forgotten.
Yeah.
So through your spiritual practice, you remembered your power.
Mhm.
It never went away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. You also have spoken about the importance of forgiveness and also accountability. Those are kind of the two other areas I really wanted to explore with you. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Forgiveness, and I will always say this from the human consciousness, right? And we are spiritual beings having a human experience. But when we try to forgive from our human consciousness versus our higher consciousness,
Mhm.
we're just kind of moving the pieces around.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, so normally people will say, you know, I'm gonna be the bigger person and I'm gonna forgive this person.
Mhm.
Or it's in the past. You know, I'm gonna leave the past where it is, you know, because time heals all wounds. And I share that time doesn't heal all wounds. Consciousness heals wounds,
Yes.
right? And so if we're looking at vibrational frequencies, you know, here's you, and here's the person that you resent, and you're a perfect vibrational match,
Mhm.
right? Because that's how the spiritual law works.
Mhm.
And you decide from a human perspective, I'm going to forgive and I'm going to let this go, right? And you know, maybe some energy has moved just from that intention, so you raise your energy a little bit here and it doesn't bother you as much. But if
Mhm.
that person comes into your view, or
Mhm.
somebody reminds you,
Yep.
right, that you're right back in the battle,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So um that level of forgiveness, it's better than nothing, but it's not sustainable.
Mhm.
But when we do radical forgiveness from the perspective of this person is a blessing, it's not giving them a pass, it's not undermining what happened or any of that. It's acknowledging all of that.
Mhm.
But when I can look at the emotions that this resentment has triggered, unworthiness, betrayal, abandonment, because that's why we are resentful. That's why we're not forgiving, is because I feel abandoned, betrayed,
Mhm.
dismissed, all of that kind of stuff. And when we can look at that from higher consciousness, from radical forgiveness, is that the truth about you?
Mhm.
That you have been dismissed, abandoned, betrayed, rejected? Is that really the truth about you? Or is that what the beliefs that we've been indoctrinated with to think that that's true?
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
So when we can allow those, because it's only those emotions that's keeping you in the unforgiveness. It's
Mhm.
not even the situation anymore.
No.
It's those emotions that's keeping you in the unforgiveness. So
Yeah.
between inner child work and taking responsibility for your part,
Mhm.
and self-forgiveness and self-accountability and self-compassion,
Mhm.
what happens is your frequency just explodes, and either this situation or this person levels up or they vibrate out,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so my other work of the new training that I've been doing for the past 8 months, called Compassionate Accountability, Healing Unconscious Racial Bias,
Mhm.
which we know that there's so many layers of the pain and trauma and resentment,
Mhm.
um, and fear and anxiety and defensiveness and all of that
Mhm.
that is going on in this world
Yes.
around racism and bias.
Mhm.
And my take on this is that a new approach must be at hand,
Yes.
that we cannot just stay angry
No.
and continue to blame, shame, and, you know, blame white people for being white and blame other people for being who they are, and, you know, stay in our trauma. It's
Mhm.
like there has to be compassionate accountability for all of us. So this training is about taking recovery professionals and
Mhm.
also to other organizations through the process of the 12 steps
Wow.
to really be able, and in a safe place to be able to really just lay bare your soul. And I tell people, I tell my participants, if you're waiting for me, you know, the white folks, if y'all waiting for me to shame you, This is not the training for that, and Black folks, if you're, waiting for me to like only, take up for us, that's not going to happen either. I'm not about white or about black. I'm about healing.
Yes.
Let's heal. Let's just get down to the nitty gritty and heal this thing.
Right.
And we can't do that. Yeah. When the blaming and the shaming is there, all it does is causes people to shut down. It's the same as why the old approach to, addiction recovery was so accusative. You're an addict. You're in denial. You need to do it like that. That never worked well for people because it just puts you back in that shame place. And from there, you're paralyzed. You can't make a change.
Well, that's just relationship 101.
Yeah.
Is that when you're attacking someone and accusing them, the conversation is over before it even gets started. So my approach is let's open hearts before we shut them down. Let's not shut down hearts before we've had a chance to open them. And some people on this planet are just not ready for this.
No, that's
some
true.
people on this planet are addicted to their racism and their position. Some people are addicted to their anger.
Yes.
And their trauma.
Yes.
And they're going to hold on to it until they leave this planet. And I have compassion for them too. It's not their time yet. But there are many people on this planet who's like, oh my God, thank you, God, a different conversation, a new conversation, a new way to heal this.
That's really wonderful, Esther. And the time is now. I mean, more than ever. I mean, we're so polarized. There's so much every day you're reading articles or in the news. It's just hatred, acts of violence all around. I mean, people have lost their minds.
It's all the illusion of separation.
Yeah.
It's all the illusion of separation. And I tell people, I want you to look at the insanity of comparing traumas.
Right.
Really? Like, it's like, so your trauma is no worse than mine, and my trauma was 20 million times worse than yours. It's like, that may be so, but it's the same healing that's going to heal us. It's not comparing the trauma that's going to heal the trauma.
Right. Exactly. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Esther, so you're doing so many wonderful things out there. If people who are watching or listening want to find out more, where do they go?
Soulrecovery.org is my website. And if you're interested in the kind of work that I'm talking about, I have a wonderful, very inexpensive $49 21-day to your authentic self program. Just go to Ester Mail, that's ESTER Mail, MAIL.com. And it's 21 days of 2-minute meditation clips, 6 tapping videos, affirmative prayer, journaling. It's like, go on this 21-day journey and follow it and come home to who you really are.
Thank you so much, Esther, for being with us today. This has really been a beautiful conversation and really inspiring.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
I just honor everyone on their journey. Exactly where you are is perfect. And you are unfolding and evolving just perfectly. And I was just in the fetal position like maybe 4 nights ago. So I don't want you to look at me as a teacher and say, oh my God, she's perfect. It's like, I am perfect as in my higher self, but in my human self, it's like, there are still times when I forget too, that I'm enough, that I'm worthy. But I'm so grateful that I have, it's like I can always return to these tools. And, I tell people, don't worship the tools, use the tools.
Yes.
Worship what they bring you to, which is your real self. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Esther. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. If you've liked this podcast, please do comment, share, rate it, just get it so that we can get it out there in the hands of more people so that they can know that there is hope, there are tools, there are ways to reconnect with your true, authentic, essential soul self. And thank you so much again, Esther, for being with us today. See you next time on Kaleidoscope of Possibilities.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time.